Good morning and welcome to Morning Coffee with Brigid. I am Brigid Burke and we are at the 30th of July. And so we've got 2 days left of the month. It occurred to me when I woke up, good morning Alex. It occurred to me when I had gotten up today, I was like, wait, August 1st is Lunasa, isn't it? It's or what they call Lammas Day in the church, which is an interesting kind of day. It's about, in Celtic myth, it has to do with what they call the Second Battle of Moytura. And I actually got to go to that battlefield, which was really, really cool. That's where I had my weird fairy experience that I told people about in another, or what they call Stray-Sod experience. And I talked about this in another live stream, so I won't bring it up again. But but at Moytura, this is where Lug becomes kind of the leader of the Tuatha De Danann forces. Who are one of the mythical peoples of Ireland. And good morning, Melissa. I was just talking a little bit about how August 1st is Lunasa, and that is the day when, referring to the mythical Irish battle of Moytura, it's the second one. There were two of them. One was called Moytura, and it was in County Mayo. The second one's in County Sligo, or in that area. And so the second battle, Lug is the one who ends up becoming the leader. He's somebody who comes in and, he has all of these different skills, and they'll say, like, whatever he would say, he'd be like, oh, I'm a musician. Oh, well, we have one of those. Oh, I'm a bar. I do this job. I do that job. Oh, we already had somebody who does that. So in other words, he wasn't going to be allowed into the clan unless he could show that he had some skill that they didn't already have. And so he said, well, you don't have somebody who can do all of them. And they're like, well, no, that's true. So then he became part of the Tuatha De Danann. And when they went to war against the Fomorians in Irish myth, then of course they were helped out by the Morrigan in this. That's one of the big stories. That's the reason I was at Moytura, because I was researching my Morrigan book. And so the problem that the Tuatha De Danann had was that the Fomorians had I don't even know what to call him. Basically, one of the Fomorians was called Balor. And Balor was actually the grandfather of Lug, if I'm not mistaken. But Balor had this huge eye, and that when he opened it, everything burned up around him. So, and of course, this really, if we think about this metaphorically, this has a lot to do with the summer sun and how hot and baking it is, and the way in which, the sun is what we need to grow things, but too much sun can bring drought, it can bring famine, it can bring all of this other stuff. So, So what happens is whenever they would try to fight against them, Balor would just open his eye and everybody would catch fire and burn up. So they lost a lot of people that way. So the question was, how do you defeat Balor? So what Lug does is he takes his lightning bolt. He has the lightning bolt, or depending on how you do it, his bow and arrow, whatever it is, it's often portrayed as being a lightning bolt, or the lightning bolt is interpreted as Lug's weapon. And again, the god that wields the lightning bolt is often the king in most of the mythologies that you have. Now, Lug wasn't necessarily the king in this case, but he certainly was a leader. He was certainly considered to be very important. And when Balor opens his eye, he turns to the side and he hits him straight in the middle of his eye and puts it out. And as soon as he does that, then, of course, Balor is defeated, and then the Tuatha De Danann go on to win the battle. Now, what's interesting about that is that this is associated, Lunasa, which is basically like Lug's Day, is August the 1st. So that's 2 days from now. And good morning, Sam. And so I'm just talking about the Lunasa festival. And so, Lug putting out the eye of Balor is basically the idea that the summer sun is brought down by the kind of storms that you get in August. Okay, so, and actually it's considered to have a thunderstorm on the day of Lunasa is actually considered to be very auspicious, because it's almost like Lug is present, bringing down the eye of Balor and moving us into autumn and into the harvest season. So August 1st, this is why I think in Ireland particularly, August 1st is considered to be more of the beginning of autumn rather than the equinox point in September. Everything in kind of the Irish cycle is like about 6 weeks before everything else, because they don't necessarily go on that. So, for example, Brigid's Day, which is February 2nd, is actually, that's like 6 weeks before the end of winter, but oftentimes that's regarded, mythologically as the beginning of spring. So yeah, everything's kind of, back May 1st is the beginning of summer. It's that kind of a thing. And of course, the beginning of winter is what we think, Samhain, what we think of as Halloween, or November 1st, like right around there. So yeah, so there's, so it's interesting. So we're about to come across one of those major points on the wheel. And of course, I usually do celebrate those at home. Of course, I'm also celebrating by getting my car inspected. Yeah, yay! But it's finally time. I've had it for 4 years, and now with the new cars, they only make you get it inspected every 4 years. So, and realized I had an inspection station 9 minutes away. I've been driving down to Flemington, or I've been paying somebody to do the inspections. And I'm like, why am I going to pay someone $100 to do my inspection when I can do it for free up the street? There shouldn't be any emissions problems with a car that's this new. So, Anyway, that's what I'm doing on August 1st. Although I'm doing a lot of other things now as well. There's been I've had a few more bookings. I do want to mention to people who are in New Jersey, and I think other than Melissa, who's actually quite far away from this place, I am doing in person in Milford, Rahani on Fridays now from 1 to 5. And I do have an appointment at 1, but the thing is I'm also doing a Reiki share with the masters who work at that center around 5:36 p.m. And I'm like, okay, so I've got after I'm done with that, I've got like 3 hours to play with if I don't have bookings. So I'm kind of encouraging people. I'm like, hey, if you want to book Riverside. But again, I don't think anybody who's currently on here would be able to do that. But anybody who may watch this subsequently during the day today or watch it on YouTube, my Fridays right now, I am kind of booking off for Karen because it does seem like I'm getting at least 1 or 2 clients each time. So, so it's worth it for me to do that. And I think I've gotten another Life Path booking, and I've got, and we've got the classes. The Dream Workshop is this weekend, so if anybody wants to participate in that, like I said, it's the same. It's basically people who are in the June class. You don't have to have taken the June class, but that's helpful. I am doing workshopping. If people have dreams that they would like to bring to the table, we can do that. And as I said in the ad, I said, it could be somebody else's dream too. Because some people I can understand are a little like embarrassed, like, oh, I don't want to talk about my own dream. I don't want to talk about, because you feel almost like embarrassed, like it's too personal or something. Some people might feel that way. So I said, well, you can always, workshop a friend's dream, or you could claim your dream as a friend's dream. You don't have to say it's yours. And and most dreams I don't think are anything, I don't know. I don't think most dreams are really like embarrassing or anything, but they do kind of, and oftentimes when you amplify the symbolism, the person doesn't have to say, oh, I think it's about this person or about that person or this situation. It can just be like, okay, that's something that they can sit with and say, oh, okay, I think I know who or what this is about. Like, and these things, I don't want people to feel like they have to share like a lot of really intimately personal information, because a lot of people just don't want to. Unless they really are close with everybody in the group, they may not want to share that kind of stuff. And I understand that. I tend to, I don't know if I'm an oversharer, but I do, I don't share anything that is, anybody else has said to me, no, I don't want this shared. Like, I absolutely don't share anything like that. But for myself, I don't know. I don't care that much. I'm kind of like, there's certain things I'll share, other people might not share those kinds of experiences and things, and I'm like, it really doesn't bother me. And if I'm working as a spiritual coach, I feel like it's important to share people with what your experience is, because a lot of times people may feel like, oh, well, you can't relate to my experience. And actually, a lot of times, well, yeah, my experience is not going to be the same as yours. There may be certainly I have a lot of empathy for people's situations. And a lot of times where our empathy connects in, it connects in with respect to our, the empathy, it has to, we often can connect it back to an experience of ours. It's kind of like when you read literature or you look at other things, and the stories that really grab you and grab your attention, there's something about that story that you relate to, that you feel like, okay, I can empathize with this character. If you read a book or watched a movie where you really cannot connect to the character whatsoever, you're either going to not like that book, movie, whatever, or you're just not going to like that character, because there's just going to be nothing about them that you can connect into. So for me, I share things because I always feel like, okay, I want to have a point of connection with people. And I'm not at a stage of life where I'm that concerned about what, people are going to think whatever they're going to think about it. But, I in a way, I'd almost rather people know what I really think about something rather than people look at me and making a judgment about me. My family does that a lot. Or even people on the outside. They'll look at certain aspects of me and say, oh, well, you're this kind of a person, or you're that kind of a person. Having long red hair, I get misjudged all the time about the kind of person that I am. People assume like, oh, you're... people have this thing about the red hair, the archetype of the redhead, right? And I'm like, well, yeah, that's not really me. So, I just happen to love having red hair. So, yeah, and I like having long hair because I had stick straight hair when I was young, and now I actually have curls, and yes, I'm going to wear them into my 50s. Thank you very much. But that doesn't. But there's a lot of other things that people. It's interesting because this kind of gets into the associations that people will have with things and with situations. You say a particular word, and people will automatically have an association. Interestingly, and we talked about this a little bit yesterday morning, and I talked about it on yesterday's Cattonia live stream when they had that Paris Olympics opening ceremony. Okay, everybody looked at that scene and thought, not everybody, but a lot of people looked at it and said, "That's the Last Supper. It's a satanic Last Supper," and it's like because their automatic association with that configuration, with the way that the people were. The table was everything that was the Last Supper, was Da Vinci's Last Supper. That was the automatic association. It's not what they were referring to at all, but that was what people associated it with. They don't know about Dionysus. So, of course, yesterday I talked about Dionysus on the other live stream because I've written and presented actually quite a lot on Dionysus. Even though we talk about the dark feminine, I always kind of view him as kind of a dark feminine figure in a way. Because I am Dionysus, one of the curious things, and I did talk about this yesterday. In Greek mythology, you have these gods, whether you're talking about Zeus, whether you're talking about Poseidon, whether you're talking about... Good morning, Joanne. You talk about all of these different gods, and a lot of them are not only philanderers, okay, in terms of, they have spouses, and they're sleeping with everybody other than their spouse, but frequently... Let's just put it this way: that the recipients of their attention, maybe it's not always wanted by the female involved. We'll just call it that. And so you would assume that a god like Dionysus, who has to do with who's a god of wine and is associated with bacchanals, which we think of as being these chaotic orgies and things like that, you would think, oh gosh, he's going to be a god who's going to be all about all these very negative aspects of sex and sexuality. In fact, Dionysus is a god who actually has very high respect for women. Women are the leaders in his particular group. Most of them, the Maenads, are the leaders in his cult. And also, when women have been assaulted unwillingly by whether it be humans or gods or whatever, Dionysus often is there to help or protect the woman. So, very interesting. And as I've noted in the Orphic cosmogony, he is actually the savior. He is actually the prototype for Jesus Christ. So there's a certain irony to people being so upset at this satanic Last Supper. So yeah, it was just kind of an interesting thing. But anyway, the thing I was going to chat about today, and of course, as we know, I always kind of get sidetracked. Joanne, you were a little late, so I was talking about Lunasa first, and then I was talking a little bit about the dream class that I'm giving, and also the Chiron class. I know there's some signups for that, but if that's something that interests people, that's going to be the 17th. So there's still time. I'm not promoting that one heavily at the moment because I just want to get the dream class filled, and then we'll look into the other. But the topic that I was really thinking about today was centered around. It was interesting. The card that came up for me was the politics card, okay, in the Osho Zen deck. And the politics card is, okay, it means a number of different things. So it's a Seven of Swords. So Seven of Swords is one of those cards that I find to be very, very tricky because On the one hand, it can, in the more positive sense, the Seven of Swords can have to do with diplomacy, with negotiation, with saying, okay, you may not be able to ask for something directly, maybe, or you may not be able to achieve something directly, but you kind of take an indirect route. That's the way in which you use, like, being artful, as they call it, right? You're using perhaps language or persuasion. It's the whole, game of diplomacy that people have, right? Is connected to the Seven of Swords. The idea that we're not being direct about something. And I've talked before about the way in the arts of war, as you see in ancient Greek mythology, you have the Ajax type who is, who just basically is very fierce, very, very Ares oriented, just goes in there and fights. And then you have the Odysseus type, who is somebody who is more conniving. He's more ambushes, guerrilla warfare, things like that, sneaking around at night. So there are kind of two different models, if you will. And of course, in the play Ajax, it's kind of Ajax versus Odysseus. But then Ajax insults Athena, and Odysseus is definitely connected to Athena. Athena is he's her special person. And she kind of directs everything that goes on in the Odyssey. And Athena is that feminine that the warrior actually needs in order to be able to achieve what he's going to achieve in battle. And when they reject the Athena, when they reject the feminine, and I've talked before. That's what I was talking about. Also, is the way in which the feminine forces in Hinduism, the Shaktis, are the ones who go to battle in the mythical things. It's the women who go to battle. It's not the men. And when Athena comes to aid somebody on the battlefield, she's adding that level of strategy, that level of, thinking, not just a direct assault, but coming in and because that's just it. I mean, you can move in like an army, like a machine, but think about, the American Revolution is actually a really good example, because what happened then was you had the redcoats, the British redcoats, who would march. And they always march in formation. And that's the way wars were fought. People kind of march in formation towards each other and then draw their weapons. Kind of the way that they had this going. And the colonists the American colonists did not have the numbers to be able to defeat the British. So they resorted to guerrilla tactics. And this was not something they were prepared for. Hiding behind bushes, hiding in trees, sneaking out from different places. Sometimes that's the way, if you don't have the direct strength, there's another way that you can get around things. So Seven of Swords is about that kind of stuff. I have my Rider-Waite deck here. I pulled it down this morning. I might use it today. In addition, I do have the Osho Zen one as well. But the Seven of Swords is, there's also an element of it, because while on the one hand, that is the element that we see that is, that allows us to negotiate, that allows us to find that third alternative. I think it's an important thing for when we need to think outside the box. Just say, here we go. Here it is. This is the traditional Seven of Swords. Okay. And what we see is this guy who's carrying all these swords, but he's on tiptoe. He's tiptoeing away from something, and he's looking back, kind of like, kind of looking behind him, and he's kind of sneaking off with these swords. So it's almost like he's gotten in and he's taken something that isn't his. Okay? So there's almost this element of thievery to it. Now, I think the reason that this topic has come up is because Mercury retrograde is right around the corner. Okay? And retrograde is, it's basically a time, so what happens during retrograde? First of all, we have, the first thing we talk about, anything connected to Mercury. So what is Mercury associated with? Communication, commerce, travel, technology, anything that has to do with this, these kinds of exchanges. Mercury retrograde also tends to kind of have a looping effect, and it can bring past situations back to the present. So it was interesting. I'm doing the readings for this week. As I mentioned, I'm behind on them. I've got about half of them done. I'm going to do the other half today. But I did Aries, Taurus, Gemini so far for the week, and I think it was Taurus that had the third house had Urias with the Ten of Swords. Okay, now Urias in Cartouche means something that comes out of the blue, and with the Ten of Swords, yeah, you're Taurus down there. Yep, I know, Joanne. so basically it means somebody who you thought something was dead and gone, it's over. Somebody's coming back. Okay, somebody's now this for some people this might have to do with love, because there was kind of an implication, at least for some people, of that. But obviously it doesn't have to be that. It could be a friendship. It could be a family relationship. It could be something. Or do we all have Taurus placements in this chat? Well, I can tell you it's my sun, and mine is the. I'm also Taurus sun. By like I'm in 0 degrees Taurus. I'm like right on the edge of Aries, Taurus. So I'm. Yeah, and mine's just between, as we had mentioned, we were talking about the house systems, 10th and 11th. He says, yep, I had a dream about my ex-husband last night. So people can even come back in a dream space, haha. Yes, Taurus. And your Taurus is South Node. Oh, okay. You're a Taurus Gemini cusp. Okay, so yeah, so that's right, Joanne. You're on the other side of Taurus. Wow, and South Node in Taurus, yeah, okay. And interesting, Alex, that some of the work that I know that you've been doing recently, yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. You have these it can be in your dream space, but I know that there seems to be something where, yeah, like there's going to also potentially be, and maybe in that case, I know you've had the dreams about your ex, but it could also be someone else maybe you're not even thinking of, because whatever this is, it's, well, I mean, of course, Taurus isn't your sun either, so that may not apply to you directly, but people who have that direct Taurus, it is, or a very significant Taurus placement, there is the possibility there of, because literally Urias is like, whoa, I never thought I was going to hear from that person again. And in my mind, because I'm Taurus, I'm going, after I did the reading, I'm like, all right, who's dead and buried and who's going to come back? Like, I mean, not literally dead and buried, but I can think of at least 3 or 4 people who I was like, where there seems like there was some either unfinished business or some nastiness or something where I'm like, and nastiness, by the way, not precipitated by me. I'll just say that. It was, I'm like, I'm wondering who's coming back around here. But now the one thing to remember though about retrograde returns, oftentimes it's a period of correction. It doesn't necessarily mean like, okay, in case where somebody has, where it's a previous lover or something. And again, like I think for everybody here, I don't think that's the thing or the issue. I don't think it's like, oh, this is a lover coming back and we're going to get back together. I don't think that applies to anybody here. But hopefully not my daughter's boyfriend. oh yeah, there's always one like that, isn't there? At least one, maybe all of them. But there's a sense that whatever is coming back, it's something that was maybe unfinished and needs to be corrected. Okay, so it may be a period of correction. It's not. So if somebody watches this who's not maybe on the live stream but watches it later and says, oh, I broke up with somebody and I've always really missed them and wanted to get back together with them, like that kind of a thing. Okay, if that person is the one who returns during retrograde, maybe you thought it was dead and buried and now it's back. One caveat with retrograde is that the relationship may revitalize itself through the retrograde period and then disappear again afterwards. Okay, so just remember that. Now, retrograde this time is August 5th through the 28th. And of course, we're in the pre-shadow period right now, and there's a post-shadow period. Because, Mercury's a little planet by the sun, but somehow he manages to have a really big shadow. And those of us, I think a lot of us here with our Gemini placements or our Mercury placements are kind of like, yeah, he's like little planet, like, makes big trouble, And at least for me, I don't know, retrograde for me, I just find, that's when, like when I used to work in IT, we actually had sysadmins from other cooperatives and things who said absolutely no upgrades will be done during Mercury retrograde. Like they knew then they knew from experience, because they would do stuff and you would just have these catastrophic failures because it's just not the time. It's not a good time to buy electronics. It's not a good time to, and communication, you have to be really careful because it's very easy for people to snap to judgments or for things that you say to be misunderstood during Mercury retrograde, okay? So we can misunderstand people, we can misunderstand their motives, and that also would go for social media because, anything that we do online. So I feel like I gotta be super careful what I say during that period of time, that I don't the odds that there could be somebody out there who mistakes or misunderstands what I'm saying could be quite high. So there's always has to be a sort of, that's why I feel like what I was seeing in a lot of the readings this week was kind of like, well, pull back a little bit and stop. Don't react immediately to something. If it's something that kind of makes you go like this, like stop and think and say, okay, wait a minute. This is what I'm hearing, but am I hearing it correctly? Make sure before reacting. Like if somebody says something and you're ready to kind of cut their head off and it turns out like, oh, no, wait, they didn't actually mean that at all. Those kind of things are more likely during the retrograde period. So maybe this is also why there's this emphasis on diplomacy and, kind of rolling with things. What Steve Judd will always say, the astrologer, is he says, during those periods when something happens, something explosive happens, then it's good to say, or if somebody confronts you with something, it's best to say, you know what, I'm going to wait. Give me 24 hours to think about this. I'm not going to react to this right now. Let's see how I feel about it in a day. And then if you still feel as strongly in the same way and it's the same kind of information, then that's one thing. But a lot of times there can be those kinds of explosions because we may immediately, because again, we're not necessarily seeing things clearly or exactly for what they are. So that's another aspect of retrograde. Not a good time to sign contracts and stuff. That's also, some people, they might not be able to help it. Like if you have a lease on an apartment or something and you have to renew that lease, and your lease is up, say August, well then, or beginning of, beginning of September or the middle of the month or something. If they're saying, oh, well, you've got to sign it by this date and it happens to be in the retrograde, it is what it is. Of course, there's also this whole thing, return and reflect, yes. And I think there's also this sense of old business versus new business. So during Mercury retrograde, it's a good time to finish old business, okay? So that's why a lot of times projects that have kind of been outstanding that we haven't finished, retrograde is a good time to finish it. Because again, it's like a cleanup period. It's not necessarily a good time to initiate something. So I'm going to be start having my first conversations. Well, they're not my first conversations about the school that I'm setting up. It's just the first time I'm trying to get everybody on one Zoom call. But, and we'll see how that works out because it's retrograde. And I'm going to be seeing my guru on the very first day of retrograde. And I'm like, oh, that's just double trouble right there. Because, the odds that there's going to be a train delay, that there's going to be, stuff that I'm going to be trying to walk, that there's probably going to be construction, I'm going to have to walk around stuff. It's very likely. I think actually the big surprise will be if I don't encounter any of that. But during traveling, if anybody does travel, it's also saying, you got to take extra time. You have Mercury everywhere. Then, what's the what's the proper expression there? Best of luck to you during this month, because but I do too. Like I said, mine's in my 10th house, and so it's going to be. We already talked about the slowdowns and things like that occur with it, but that Seven of Swords energy, I think it's coming up today because it's saying, okay, number one, be careful because, like I said, things may not be what they appear. Seven of Swords, like I said, sometimes there's this kind of sneaky energy to it as well, because there's this idea that it's often called a card of sabotage. But what I find when it comes up in readings is that it's often self-sabotage. It's not of somebody else who's out to get you, Although I do feel like that kind of stuff does become clear during a retrograde period. I do feel like people's motives kind of become revealed during that time period, and then decisions are made about what you're gonna do about that. It's going to be a big time for cleanup, and interestingly, coming just before the beginning of Virgo. Which Virgo is all about getting it organized, right? Getting it together. It says, I was just going to say that in my case. Yes. And, so we are moving into this space where basically it's saying it may be good not to approach, not to attack something directly. But also, I think we need to be wary of areas where maybe we're not seeing ourselves or our own situation clearly as well. So there may be a tendency to self-sabotage. There may be a tendency to assume the worst about a situation when we shouldn't. Now, I was talking about the Taurus reading, and Urias, by the way, has come up in everybody's reading so far, someplace. And I feel like Urias is that little unexpected element. Now, Urias is the royal serpent in ancient Egypt. So, and again, like many cultures, the serpent does not have a negative connotation in those cultures. Urias has more to do with wisdom, honesty, and being able to see through people's stuff. But it also has to do with things that take an unexpected turn. And generally, it's an unexpected benefit. Because some people will see it, like I've gotten questions from people. They'll say like, oh, I'm working on this project and it's a very important one. And I want to know, but I'm running into these problems and I don't know. I don't think it's going to work out. What do you see? And I'm thinking of one person in particular who I read for who does it. And literally almost every time Urias will come up, it's not what it looks like. Urias, that's what it means. It's not what it looks like. That's kind of the catchphrase here. It's not, it's saying go hide in a blanket fort. Yeah. And, yeah, you never know. And, turn your phone off and disappear for a month. It's, of course, I wouldn't be making any money if I did that, but, I wouldn't have a business, wouldn't be able to communicate with anybody. But yeah, there are times when I just feel like I just want to turn everything off and kind of walk away. But yeah, so I don't know, there's a strong element here. Let me get my cards out so we can, get onto our reading for today. I just feel like, it's kind of letting us know that this is going to be a time of corrections. There may be people returning, but again, look at it, take that return with a grain of salt. Some people like to see these things as a sign. I know if somebody's been missing somebody and then they come back, they say, see, that's a sign we're supposed to be together. I've seen and heard this too. And what Mercury retrograde says is not necessarily. It could just be that whatever needs to be corrected or whatever you've needed to see about that situation, now you'll be able to see it. And again, and hey, who am I to say? Sometimes maybe somebody's coming back because it is meant to work out. Who knows? Every situation is different. There's not one thing, but I just feel like retrograde returns are things that they're more about either finalizing, correcting, or seeing clearly. Because by the end of the retrograde, it becomes the reality of something that maybe you got wrong the first time is now going to be clear. So it's kind of, I guess you could look at it, if you want to look at Mercury retrograde positively, I think you can look at it more like it's like when you take that test and you didn't do so hot on it, it's like, well, now you can take it over again for a higher grade, it's that kind of a thing. I think that's more the energy there. But it is kind of telling us, you do have to be aware that these things happen. And, it did occur to me the other day when I think about the kinds of caution that I show, like before I go to see my guru, the kind of caution that I show, I'm kind of like, all right, I have to fully expect that the timetable that I have isn't going to be the timetable. I'll show up and, the likelihood that everything's going to go smoothly, it's probably not. So, and even similarly with retrograde, that's when we're aware of these delays, problems, and obstacles, and we kind of say, okay, it's Mercury retrograde. It's going to take longer to fix this technological thing. I'm just going to have to wait for this thing. Oh, there's train delays. I'm just going to have to wait for those. And it's interesting. I thought, but that's kind of a mindset that maybe we should have all the time, not just during retrograde. It's kind of, because really, I think that's kind of the key. So we're in this period of time where we're aware that things can get screwed up, but really, strictly speaking, they can get screwed up anytime. And we'd probably be a lot happier if we allowed for that, if we always just kind of said, okay, I have this plan, but this might get delayed, that might not happen. Because I always also feel like whatever it is that you are meant to have comes to you. If it's an opportunity that is part of what you're doing, people talk about missed opportunities, but I don't think there's any true missed opportunities. I think if you miss something, it's because it's not something you should have done. Hello, how are you doing, Brigid? Okay, hello, and can you give me the first name there, because I'm looking at your handle, and I'm not sure who you are, but, and good morning, yes, and thank you for joining. It's, So I have, what you call it? It's, Nate. Oh, okay. Well, nice to have you on. Nice for you to join. We've got, we're finishing up here with the reading right now. So, so we will see what happens here. What was I going to say? Getting back on my train of thought here. There is a, what you call it? Okay, so with the retrograde, yeah, I mean, this is a time for revisiting, but also I think there's a reminder there that we don't want to sabotage ourselves. And also just recognizing, I think it reminds us that there are these delays, problems, and unpredictabilities, and sometimes it's better to just expect unpredictability than always expect that everything's going to go. It's a little bit more of a Zen way, because you can kind of get into this space where you, where you're very, you can get into this space where you are, my brain is not finding the words at the moment. But basically you are, getting, basically you kind of just go with the flow of things, which, I was not doing right there, but you get into the flow of something, and you get into the flow of what you need to, know, what you need to actually do in the particular moment. Yeah, that's funny. We're talking about Mercury retrograde, and then I'm finding I'm just, all of a sudden, I just don't have any words. It's just like I had this fog. So anyway, we'll just take that. We'll take that as a sign that I should just get onto this reading. Okay, so traveling. Okay, this is our first card. So this has to do with speed. Okay, this has to do with messages. Yeah, feel me. You feel me this morning. Yeah, I'm just like, what's that all about? Anyway, traveling. So this is about speed. This is about doing things. This is about things coming in and happening very, very quickly when we see this card, right? This is about, and it's also about things happening in a way that we don't have to plan too much for something, okay? You don't have to plan too much. And so, yep, same, it's raining here. It's kind of an interesting, I don't know. I have moments like that occasionally. I also tend to forget how old I am too. So it's kind of like, okay. But an inner feeling of which we're aware, or not aware really, is the Chariot card, the awareness card. Okay. So as you can see, speaking of fogginess, there's this fogginess, and then there's the person who's kind of trying to emerge. And that's interesting too, because in a lot of the readings I've had a lot of either Nepenthes or Pyramid energy from the Cartouche deck in the first house. And so that's the idea of, who I am and what I am is being tested, or who I thought I was, I'm not really clear on it at this point. So this is about an awareness that is dawning. I transcend time. You have to teach me how to do that. So yeah, there's this whole thing of you are kind of opening up to something here. And the external feeling of which we're aware, now this is the Nine of Pentacles, okay? Nine of Pentacles has to do with security. Usually it has to do with independence, having enough to share. But this is called the ripeness card here. So we know that we're ready for something. We know that we're ready for something. Things are moving fast. We know that we're ready. We know that some new aspect of us is emerging here, okay? And the advice it's giving us is the Ace of Wands. It's the Source card. Connect to Source, okay? Connect to your source, whatever that is. Connect to your, if you like the word term, higher self. It's not one of my favorite terms, but you're basically your kind of inner authentic soul, connecting to your guides, connecting to whatever connects you to that, which connects you to that bigger picture that we're going to have an awareness of. Okay, so this is kind of saying go for it. Connect to source. Things are moving right now. I mean, things are slowing down, but they're still moving. You don't have to plan too much. All you need to do is connect to source, and it will be very clear to you what you're doing and where you have to go, and so forth. Because our outcome card is the Nine of Cups again, but it's the laziness card. It's this card of, I think where we're becoming aware of something, we know it's the time to act. This is saying, go ahead and act. You don't, I think this card implies that it's a period where we're kind of saying, well, I don't know. Or in the context of retrograde, maybe what we're saying is, well, retrograde's coming, so I'm just not going to do anything right now. And I don't think it's quite saying that. I think it's, or it may be just saying, get stuff done before retrograde starts. But I think there's this element here of, we know what we have to do, but we may be kind of dawdling about moving forward on it. It's kind of like, well, let me wait till I get this done. Let me wait till I get that done. And we've talked about that before, certainly. I'm just going to flip some Rider-Waite cards too, just to see what we come up with here. Yeah, so I feel here like it's saying, you know, almost like it's saying there's something you want to do and you want to do it now. Like you want to do it, like I always see Ace of Wands as like a period of 1 week. I always kind of see that as like, do something now. Yeah, I mean, we've got this Two of Wands. We've got the Two of Wands. Okay, so we've got this. Yeah, I mean, you're ready. You're ready to launch here, right? Your guy's like got the world in his hands and he's looking out. You know, ready to launch. We're looking at invitations that'll be coming in. Okay, you got the Knight of Cups, and it's time to take a risk. You know, the Fool. Fool is you know, this is that Aries energy. It's the Fool. You know, moving forward here, and then we have Justice. Okay, so Justice is about not only finding that balance and equilibrium, but operating within truth or operating within fairness. I feel like when there's a situation where we feel we're not understood or not treated fairly, Justice is about bringing the truth forward and bringing forward what is actually fair. So I don't know. This is interesting because the readings today seem to be saying we're talking about slowing down and taking our time, but the readings are kind of saying there's something you want to do and you want to do it now because the time is ripe. And I think what it's saying is that internally you know what that is. Because again, this is the Chariot. So that's being in control. That's moving. You know, your car is on the road and it's still moving. It has not gotten stopped and stuck yet. Like, so it's time to go for something right now. That's interesting. So that's the energy that came up in today's reading. So yeah, because a lot of times the reading will connect us to whatever our theme is of the day. But this one, and maybe it does connect because it might be saying, don't self-sabotage. Don't tell yourself, I can't do this right now, or, oh no, this isn't going to work. You still have time. Like we've got another, today's the 30th. Yeah, I think we've got roughly another, not a little less than a week until retrograde proper, until Mercury actually stations and then starts going backwards. So I think there's a sense of, we may all have certain things that we just want to get done right now. But we might be a little comfortable in going, well, maybe I can wait on that a little longer. And it's kind of I think it's basically saying like, don't wait on something. Like now, if you're feeling like there's something you need to accomplish, I feel like we need to do it like right now. So that's the energy that's coming up for today. I think that's all I've got for you today. I'm going to go and get on with my day. I've got I got 2 or 3 things already going on today. And actually, I've got stuff going on all week. I'm thinking about it. I'm like, wow, I've got appointments. I've got different errands and things I have to run, and different people dropping in and visiting and so forth. So yeah, so I've got quite a busy week ahead of me. But I will be here tomorrow morning. Obviously, if you've missed part of this, the recording is going to be here. Thank you guys for joining me. It's always fun to have all you guys here. And so have a great rest of your day. Have a great day, and thank you again for this. Oh, you're welcome. Yeah, and no problem, as they say. And then and I will. Yeah, so I will see you guys tomorrow. Yeah, take care.